Hey, what's going on, Sarasota? Welcome to the Sarasota SpeaX Podcast. My name is Brad Hannon.
I'm Trey Martell.
Felipe, Colón.
And we've got an awesome guest for you today, Mr. Jamie Miller of the Restore Midnight Pass, his spokesperson for Restore Midnight Pass, Bay Park Conservancy, and co-president of Sertoma. How'd I do?
Did great. Thanks for having me.
It's a lot to, and there's more too. I mean, we could get into all the other stuff, but I think we named the three important ones there. So
thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We've talked a ton about restoring Midnight Pass, and definitely want to talk about it some more. It's an awesome project, but you know, I'm curious. I know they're building a park over there and whatnot, but Bay Park Conservancy, what's the big goal there?
So the Bay Park Conservancy is city-owned land, which most people know as the Van Wezel parking lot right now. It's
the Purple Cow?
Purple Cow,
1,400 parking spots that you might see half a dozen people in eating lunch in the afternoon.
I think Strong Roofing just sponsored an event over there, right?
We did last Friday.
Yeah.
What was it? Friday Fest. Yes. Yeah, we had a great time.
Oh yeah, we're doing lots of so you probably did that in phase one, which just we're coming up on our 1 year anniversary, October 18th through 22nd. The former lead singer of Journey is going to have a concert, and the great thing about the Bay Park is that everything's free.
Okay.
You know, it's a park that's free and open to everyone in the public, and that was part of our initial guiding principles. So before we even got started, if somebody is out there from a different community listening to this and they want to use a case study on how to take a public-private partnership and make it a success, the Bay Park Conservancy is the exact way you want to do it.
A shining example, huh?
Community buy-in. More than 130 local community organizations supported the original project. We formed the Conservancy. We formed a board, guiding principles before we ever did any planning on what the park would look like. So you're seeing phase one where you had your event last Friday. You know, that's just the first, I think about 8 or 10 acres of that is phase one out of the 50 something. So you can imagine when all of that parking lot gets turned into just beautiful open space right there on the bay.
Before we get too far into the weeds, you know, calling it a park is rather modest. I mean, I'm shocked
it's more than just a swing set, right?
I'm shocked more people don't know about this because this is probably the number one project that's going to make a difference on how Sarasota looks and feels for the next 100 years. I mean, just because there's no other land on the bay like that we can actually have a blank slate with, right? I mean, it's not just going to be a park.
The last government-owned property in Florida of that size that's being redeveloped into
East and West Coast, Panhandle, everything.
Absolutely.
Wow. And it's right next to our downtown, which that's something most cities don't have, right?
So what's happening? Is the Van Wezel still going to be there, or is that?
Think of how Marina Jacks became over. You know, if you go back and look at pictures, when Marina Jacks came, it wasn't the center of downtown, and now it is.
Right.
Marina Jacks and the Bay and that district will end up being the center of what people consider downtown Sarasota.
So when I picture a park, you know, I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old at home.
Yeah.
I picture, you know, somewhere to take them, push them on the swings, to go down a couple of slides. You know, you got hopefully some shade going to be there. But beyond the park structure, I mean, what's that look like? There's shops and stuff.
So one of the guiding principles is to make sure we have a park that is sustainable in perpetuity, and that was one of the number one things was the economic side of it.
That's a nice way of saying someone's got to pay for it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Somebody does, and so when people start talking, you know, that includes the boat ramp that's there on the north end of the park, 10th Street boat ramp. And
weren't they talking about closing that boat ramp?
No, we were never talked about closing it. There was some discussion during the planning phase that it would move west.
Gotcha.
And to create more of what we're calling the Canal District, but that's just not feasible. So we're going to expand the current.
Awesome.
The current boat ramp will be expanded. So, and then we're going to try to expand that parking to ensure that we have more.
Yeah, that's always been
boat parking and all of those things that people like to complain about.
Well, that's why I've seen it, because I just saw some people on Facebook saying, you know, hey, don't close this boat ramp. It's the only boat ramp I can put my boat in at, and
it's not going to happen. It's not on the drawings to get rid of it. It's not anything. It's staying there. Immediately in phase two, we're going to kind of do the outside edges up to the southern edge of the boat ramp. So one of the first things that you'll start seeing with the boat ramp would be on that southern canal side.
Right.
redoing that seawall. We just received a grant from the state of Florida to redo the seawall, and we're going to put day docks in there that will hold about 30 average size boats, 25, 30 feet. And then we're going to have kind of a food truck area, so that will be right there where we can, obviously, if a storm comes in, you just drive them away, right? So it's eventually we'll have buildings and restaurants and things like that. But the first step that you'll start seeing probably within the next 18 months is that seawall, the day docks, and a food truck area. And then we have a resiliency along the bay. We got a $12 million grant from what is now the Department of Commerce, I think, for the state of Florida. They turned Enterprise Florida into Department of Commerce. And so we received $12 million. Governor DeSantis came down and was nice enough to present that check. And then we have the group of historic buildings and those two historic lawn bowling greens that are going to be maintained, refurbished, and that whole parking lot will be much more park-like.
I think Felipe's pretty excited about that. I think lawn bowling. Weren't you in a lawn bowling league?
No comment.
We know Felipe loves him.
It is a great sport for an older gentleman to play, though.
Yeah.
You know.
Is that why you picked it
get that old.
It's a state of mind, Jamie. It really is.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what's obviously a huge, massive project. So what's is there like a timeline
but
for
you guys
it to be
are doing
100%?
You guys are doing all the kind of non-controversial stuff that other people are paying for first. It seems like, right?
So part of it is that,
because you know how it is around here. We love to debate development when most of us are not developers. That's like
so the controversial part of it is the Van Wezel. There is we are the stewards of the land. The Bay Park Conservancy is the stewards of the land. The Performing Arts, the Sarasota Performing Arts Foundation, is the steward of the Van Wezel and the new Performing Arts Hall. So we would prepare, should they get their project green-lit and all those things that need to happen for the Performing Arts Hall, we would prepare the land, and then they would build the vertical.
Okay.
So that's just that sometimes people get confused with between the two projects, because the Van Wezel sits on the Bay Park land, right? And we're the stewards of the land.
Right.
Well, that's not an uncommon setup when you talk hotels, right? Because every hotel usually has a land lease, and someone owns the dirt, and then someone else owns and operates and develops the hotel. Yeah. Right? So that's not crazy. I mean, maybe it isn't government.
I don't know if that's controversial. I know that people think the new Performing Arts Hall, or what we do with the Van Wezel, the great thing about this project, like I said at the beginning, is because we had 130 different community organizations involved with it, that everything we've done has been community-based. So it's not like there's a few people, the four of us aren't going to sit around and decide what we're going to do with the Van Wezel Performing Arts Hall. We're going to decide that as a community, and whatever makes the most sense for us to do that.
So are we knocking down the purple cow or not?
That is yet to be determined, because the community, that's not a decision the Bay Park Conservancy Board's going to make.
Right.
We're going to operate on behalf of the city. And so if citizens in the city and decide that that's the best use for that land after the new Performing Arts Hall is built, then that's what will happen. But right now, doesn't seem to be conventional wisdom with what the community is feeling about the purple cow.
So I think we could better understand your answer by understanding better your involvement in this and your background a little bit, because I think that's very relevant to why you're there and what you're doing.
So,
because like you said, it is a community collaborative process.
In this particular project, I became involved with it. I worked 3 years at the Economic Development Corporation, and so we were one of those organizations. And so I sat on one of the boards for the Bay Park, and then when I left the EDC, the Bay Park Conservancy was nice enough to think my leadership was valuable enough to have me, permanently involved.
It's awesome.
For our listeners who might not know what the EDC is, can you just real quick?
So the EDC is a public...
Or for the guys on this side of the table that don't know what the EDC is.
That's how I say that nicely.
Excuse me. The EDC is the Economic Development Corporation of Sarasota County. Every county in Florida has some sort of economic development organization. And ours, the way we have it set up, is a public-private partnership between the county and the EDC. And I worked with basically government relations. So I would work with projects in the community that dealt with quality of life, any types of transportation, anything that touches the political environment.
So you're familiar with gentrification?
I am familiar with that word.
I just became familiar with that last week. We had the current mayor, Kyle.
Yeah.
What's his last name? Kyle Batty. Yeah. I didn't want to screw it up because I screwed it up, but I learned a lot there. So I'm sure there was some involvement with some of that stuff as well, like what he's doing.
So, so part of what we did with the Bay was we formed a tax increment financing district that will help pay for and build and maintain the park. And that was a negotiation between the Bay Park Conservancy Board, the city of Sarasota, and the county.
So a TIF, tax increment financing, is basically, I'm not an expert on this.
TIF. It's a TIF.
It's when you guys tax the people who live right around it because their property is going to be improved, what is the proper way to say?
So let's say a house, I think we know most of those condos there aren't at the $100,000 level, but let's, for just sake of
simple math.
Easy math. Thank you.
Fair.
So let's say on a certain date that's negotiated in the contract, a house is worth $100,000. The current taxes they pay on the $100,000 is distributed to the county, the city, and everything exactly like it is. Okay. And then for a period of 15 years, let's say the house grows to a value of $110,000. That additional $10,000, not additional tax, just the tax on the additional value of that house is then the taxes on that additional value go to what's called the tax increment financing district. In this case, it goes to the Bay Park.
Okay.
A split that's negotiated between the Bay Park Conservancy and the Performing Arts Foundation.
From my understanding, it basically the homeowner or the property owner, their taxes aren't changing.
They do not.
It's just the portion that
it's just how they're distributed.
So they're going to pay the taxes.
So they won't be taxed anymore.
It's not an additional tax. No.
So the city or county or whoever just basically said, we're going to give up some of our growth in the tax base to support this effort.
Right.
Okay.
That's 100%.
That makes sense.
That's no one's talking about this.
You're going to pay it anyway. You're going to pay the tax anyways. Might as well go to something good like that.
Are people talking about this, Jamie?
I think that there was a time where people, when we were passing it, I think people talked about it a little bit. But I think most people, this has been a long project. I first moved here in '98, and it was discussed at some level there. It started being discussed in earnest in 2009, 2010. And so then 8 or 10 years of planning the governance of this organization and the planning, and the foundation and the 130 organizations, all of that took years, so.
All the boring stuff that's difficult to complain about because you don't understand it.
Right.
Sorry for getting boring, Felipe.
No. I'm saying, what I'm saying is like.
That's a nice way.
Nobody asks the questions about the process because that stuff is boring compared to, we're going to put this 20-story building here. So now everybody's got a problem.
I'm over here just wondering when it's going to be done. Like, when can we be 100%?
The TIF tax.
Probably about 8 years.
The TIF tax, right? It goes directly to the surrounding residents because it's going to improve their property value.
It does.
So it's drawing away from the main pool for someone like me that owns 3 properties in the city. So I'm the real victim. Those people pay no more taxes, and we've already decided that it's raising their property value. So it's drawing from our pool to go to this fund, right?
Well, it depends on what you consider important in a community.
Yeah.
Is a parking lot more important than a world-class park? And so we, as a community, have decided that one of our main things that we want to have in our community is a world-class park.
Yeah, but the counter argument would be that then the people that's property, it's improving their property value, should pay more, and they found a way not to pay more. Therefore.
Well, we'll just expand the tax increment financing district to include you, and then we'll be more inclusive.
If it doesn't raise my taxes.
No, that's actually.
But it doesn't raise my property value.
You brought up a good point, though. When you put it in, obviously.
Yeah,
that was an argument that a county commissioner made at the time, was that, if you're taking future growth. But look at Central Park, which is the world-known conservancy, right? If you have a view overlooking over Central Park, the value of your property is at least $1 million or more, worth more, sure, just for that view.
Right.
And so it makes sense that view, the taxes on that view, would then go to maintain the park.
Yeah, I'd rather you put Central Park or your conservancy right next to my house, and me pay no more tax dollars.
You mean like the Legacy Trail and the pickleball courts?
Yeah, those.
I think you've done okay with that one.
So what would the I mean, because you put it as, hey, do you want a parking lot or do you want it a world-class park? And if you asked, a million people and you asked them like that, they would say, well, I want a world-class park.
Sure.
But there certainly was counter arguments to, funding the project, to even getting to where it is now. What were the counter arguments, if there were any?
I think most of the counter arguments, like a lot of things in our body politic, come around disinformation and fear, right? And so, of course, there were a lot of boaters who were afraid that the boat ramp's going to go away. It is not. So there's people who, there are people who are concerned about the price of the new Performing Arts Hall, and people confuse the two projects, right? And so, I don't think that there's anyone who doubts. We have our city's first library is uninhabitable. I mean, it's like, oh, it's a historic building. We can't tear it down, but nobody can step inside of it. And so, we as a community should probably decide, and we have decided that we're going to make it habitable and make it a useful building once again, right? If we're going to keep it a historic building, so we're going to maintain and embrace and you start thinking about Sarasota and where we have historic buildings. It's one of the few places, and it's certainly one of the few places on 41 or a major thoroughfare where we can kind of drive by and say, wow, there's the old city auditorium. Everybody sees that and knows it's a historic building. And, we're not a city that has a whole lot of that.
Right. No, that's awesome. Well, speaking of projects that have gone and been drug on a very long time, I know that you're a spokesperson for Restoring Midnight Pass as well. So we've talked about this issue on a couple of podcasts, but my favorite part of that whole thing is how that pass was even closed originally. Yeah. So you seem like someone that may be educated on that topic.
Yeah, it's a shame. It was a little bit of a shell game between the county commission in like 1982. The state of Florida and a couple of very rich landowners. And so the pass has gone through periods of where there's always been a pass somewhere on the south side between Siesta Key and Casey Key.
Right.
Historically, there's always been some sort of pass. And it's been called different things over the year, Buccaneer Pass or Blind Pass,
Blind Pass.
Is it true
Midnight
that
Pass.
Has it moved locations naturally over time?
It has. Naturally and maybe guided a little bit.
Okay.
So depending on who you ask.
Okay.
I don't want to revise history in any way, and I'm not, but as a general rule, the pass changes. Now, the issue today is that most people believe Felipe Creek comes out into the intercoastal and flows north, because that's what it does today. Historically, it's always flowed south.
Okay.
So when we closed that path, we created a major disruption of how our water moves in the intercoastal in Sarasota, in Little Sarasota Bay. And so, and that's a major issue, especially when you have people who say things like, well, we can't restore the pass because there's a new ecology there, and there's the fish are spawning closer to shore. Well, they shouldn't be spawning closer to shore. They should be spawning more upland.
Right.
And like turtles, fish don't become big fish unless they find deep water.
Right.
Right. And so when you have a bay like Little Sarasota Bay that takes 10 to 12 days to quote flush. Tampa Bay, for instance, takes 3. Down in
it's probably a little
Roberts
bigger
Bay,
too, right?
Roberts Bay takes 3. So along the southwest coast of Florida, the average flushing of water in a bay is 3 days, and we take at least 3 times that, maybe 4 times that in 10 to 12 days, depending on which study you read. But it's not. There's no study that says it's 4.
We got to have Edub throw that stat up on the screen because that's interesting.
And so when you have 10 to 12 days, think about a fish, like a spawning fish.
Right.
So it has to take the tide out to deep water. Well, it's not taking a tide for 10 days. So anybody who's saying, oh, we're protecting spawning fish, you're only protecting fish food. And Dr. Tomasco from the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program gave a presentation before the Board of County Commissioners this past spring. And his quote was, we have to restore the tidal connection because little fish cannot become big fish. That's the expert's quote, not mine.
Right.
And so, and that's just one of the problems. You get into bottom water epoxification and salinization of the water because of water runoff from a big storm.
Right.
Hurricane Ian caused a huge problem in the bay where, big fish do fine, coming through and staying in the channel, but little fish just can't take it because you literally, the salinity of the water is, and nobody tests it except for, a few, but it's not an official test, right?
Right.
Like the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program tests it, but there's not an official stat. So they say that the salinity of water is different at different depths. And so you take a fish that's looking for shade or sunlight and it goes to a different depth and it dies.
The Oyster Boys, we had them on and they told us the exact same thing based on the studies. And they also had the disclaimer that they weren't experts, but
I'm not a scientist.
Sounded pretty interesting to me. I mean, sounded plausible. I mean, water separates, right?
Right.
Hey, we're getting to know Jamie Miller really well here with an interesting conversation. You're getting ready to get to know him a little bit more with rapid fire questions.
I'm Jamie Miller and this is Rapid Fire. War movie would be Midway. Running Scared with Billy Crystal and Gregory Hines. I like the a little bit more of the outskirts of town, so I'm kind of a hot sands, red barn, paddy wagon kind of guy. So I'm not a premier mixologist type drinker. I'm kind of just a Bacardi and Diet guy. So I'm a dive bar kind of Bacardi and Diet. They can't mess it up.
Cheers! I'll drink to that, bro.
Well, I like college more on Saturday and the NFL on Sunday.
Okie dokie.
Oh, man. I went through a series of concerts at Vans Warped Tour with my sons, and those are probably some of my greatest memories at concerts. I liked Joan Jett. They would have gone more with Chiodos, but I first saw Paramore when she was about 13 at Vans Warped Tour. That depends on whether you're right or left-handed and if it is hanging in front to your right or to your left. Maybe I would go with Taylor Swift because then I could maybe meet Travis Kelce. Steak, watermelon, and ice cream. I would, I've been on Twitter forever since its inception, and I've always thought it was useless. So I don't know that I would change anything. I don't use it very often.
Okie dokie.
Buy tech, but don't keep it too long.
Buy low, sell high. Remember, no one ever went broke taking a profit.
Yeah, the beach. No, the I like. Listen, we have so many wonderful places. We have these beautiful rooftop bars in downtown Sarasota. I like Crescent Beach on Siesta Key is one of my favorite spots in Sarasota on the beach. Of course, Sunset Beach, kind of outside the Siesta Village, is a great place. St. Armand's is a beautiful. We just have too many to choose. I love being on a boat during sunset. It's we have a lot of places that are wonderful sunset watching. The Bay Park Conservancy is a great place to watch a sunset. I would just say give me a call and we'll go to lunch.
What do you think? Tomorrow? Lunch? You and me?
Okay.
I'm happy to meet with people and share. Publicly, you don't like to share your failures, but those are obviously more valuable in the political arena than successes. Politics is certainly some place where success has many fathers and failure is an orphan.
Yeah, so that's kind of the issue at hand, but you're more the spokesperson for it, trying to kind of move that
right.
hypothetical football.
And we're a nonprofit organization that is supporting the county's effort. It's county property that it's county permits that must take place. For the first time since 1982, we have 100% political support from the county, state delegation, and our local congressman. That has never happened before. And in support of the project, and the next logical question is, what's the project? Right now, the project is restore the tidal connection between the Gulf of Mexico and Little Sarasota Bay.
Yeah,
like a lot of these things we've talked about, fear and rumors, right? That's what people get. Right. Change in rumors are what people fear the most, and so it is very. This is no different.
Right.
So do we do it with a culvert? Is it done with hardening of the pass so it doesn't meander, like you suggested, or do we make a navigable pass? Most people think that a jetty in that particular area, like the Venice jetty, would not work because of sand migration through the area, and a jetty may stop that. But there's some arguments that you could do, quote, a short jetty that doesn't go past the original beach of Siesta Key or Turtle Beach, right? Like, so you could harden it sort of with a jetty that would not affect the sand migration. So a lot of those things are just kind of, from an engineering standpoint, above kind of my knowledge level. And I think most people in our community have come to the understanding that we have to restore the connection if we're going to have a vibrant Little Sarasota Bay.
So what's the process on getting it approved? Do you have to get the idea of restoring the connection approved first, or do you have to get the method by which it's restored approved in order to get?
Not sure I understand the question, but I'll try to answer. I'll try to answer what I think.
Is it a bill that says, hey, who votes to restore the pass? Raise your hand. Good, go. Yeah. Or is it, hey, I have to have a proposed idea on how much it's going to cost before we vote on it?
Does the ability to open the pass depend on the method that they end up using, chosen by the engineers and scientists?
Only because one of the things
the drawing.
Because some of the things you have to consider when you're considering this are things like, not only fish migration but turtle migration, turtle nests, seagrass. How much is there? How much do you have to dig up to do the pass?
So is this the kind of situation like when they build those oil pipelines out west and they find like one, red-footed spotted duck, that happens to be near there, so everything must stop and,
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that, because I don't know that certainly on the land bridge that has been artificially created by man between Siesta Key and Casey Key, you will find a turtle nest or two during mating season, but I don't think that you're going to disrupt the turtle migration process by having restoring the tidal connection. So I was trying to think of what your other question was, but
you answered it. I think the
So to answer your question, the first thing, the county has to apply for permits, which includes putting forth some level of a plan of the way they think it would have to happen. That then starts the conversation with DEP. And then you have to get involved with things like the Army Corps of Engineers and an organization that probably nobody's ever heard of, maybe in this room, or maybe certainly not your listeners.
Well, because of Katrina,
the West Coast Navigational Intercoastal District, right?
Okay,
and
so
it's
a mouthful.
WCIND. I might have mixed up a couple of those words, but it's WCIND, and West Coast Intercoastal Navigational District. So they're the ones who take care of the buoys and things out in the channel. So you have a lot of these state, federal organizations that have to come together, and the first step is the county applying for the permits with some level of a plan of what they want to do. Does that mean that would be the plan that ends up being the final version?
Probably
almost
not.
surely not,
Right.
because it will have to be.
They will have to have a plan in place to apply.
They'll have to, the ultimate plan will be determined through all those organizations coming to the table and saying what's right. Make sure we're doing the right thing for the Fish and Wildlife Commission. We'll make sure we're doing the right thing for the Army Corps of Engineers, doing the right thing for the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program, the WCIND. You could list probably a dozen.
So what you're getting at is all the various bureaucracies need to be satisfied, and that would probably explain why they hired you.
Well, thank you.
Thank God those
And so we're
bureaucracies
probably,
exist.
if you want to put a timeline on it, where it's probably a 4 to 5 year process if we're able to, get it moving and keep it moving.
Yeah, well, I mean, we never want to talk in guarantees or anything like that, but it doesn't sound like it's an if now. It sounds like it's more of a when, and even more so the how, right?
So the county commission is meeting October 10th to discuss this very issue, and to I believe they will direct staff to include the financial portion of the planning and permitting process to start the
Probably one of the most important pieces, right?
Right.
How much money is it going to cost? The Restore Midnight Pass has been something we've spoke about a lot. One thing that we haven't really, aside from attending some meetings and things like that, we haven't really talked about community involvement, and if there's anything that the community can continue to do or is maybe not
right
doing.
now the best thing to do is to go on our Facebook page, Restore Midnight Pass, and it's Restore Midnight Pass 2,
Right.
and just join, because we're starting kind of that grassroots process of communicating with the public. We for instance, we had through SRQ Resiliency, I don't know if you guys have spoken about that. That's the Hurricane Ian money, the $201.5 million the county received from HUD. And so one of the things that we did that, the pass is probably not going to get HUD money, right?
Yeah.
The housing and urban development, although I believe it qualifies under kind of, the number 10.
Right.
If there's 10 rules you have to have, we probably qualify under number 10. But you also, if you're a county administrator, or you're a county commissioner, you don't want to spend money and then have the federal government claw it back if it doesn't qualify. So, but what we did was we used that opportunity because they asked for public input. And so there were about 800 responses total for how they were going to spend SRQ resiliency money. And about 700 people from the community got on there and said they need to use it for Restore Midnight Pass.
Wow.
So that's sort of one of the things that I help organizations do, is to bring that kind of community, public, and government awareness and those three synergies together.
Well, we love it, and we kind of stumbled onto the topic ourselves, but all very familiar with it, or now have become very familiar with it, and obviously it's a massive issue, so it's pretty cool. Let's talk real quick about, and I think we can tie this into your foundation, but how does one get started in all this? Like, where's the backstory? Because that's the interesting. You're doing a lot for these projects and whatnot, but I mean, you didn't just wake up one day and say, I want to restore Midnight
Pass. So how far
Pass.
back do you want to go? Like, like a lot of people, I was inspired by a teacher. I had a 7th grade teacher who, believe it or not, we see things differently now, but he was the president of the teachers union. And he brought a lot of that politics into the classroom and allowed everybody to have honest, open, and reasonable discussions. And
Reasonable arguments, you mean?
yeah, reasonable arguments. You must have read my blog, reasonablearguments.com.
Plug for the blog there.
So, but he did. Even though he had his own personal views, he allowed 7th grade students to sit and have a vibrant discussion about what they thought. And that was coming into the presidential race with Ronald Reagan in 1980. So, and so that kind of got me on the path of Reagan. And then my dad was a minister, my mom was a social worker, so I always want to give back to the community, and so I decided to try to do it from within the body politic rather than from the outside, and that's the short story. I'm a former executive director of the state Republican Party. I got involved in '94, with the Contract of America by Newt Gingrich, and ran my first couple county commission and school board races that year. I went on in 2012 to be a consultant here in Florida for Newt, so that was one of my highlights of my career. And throughout the years, one of my claims to fame, and this could probably take a show all into itself, I was director of field operations during the 2000 presidential election and recount. So while that's ancient history maybe to a lot of your listeners, it was 37 days of chaos that determined the presidential race by 537 votes.
That's Bush Gore and the hanging Chad for those watching at home.
Didn't Gore invent the internet?
That's what he says. That's among other things.
Yeah, unfortunately, he couldn't cheat with it by then.
No, there was no.
It wasn't quite there. Wasn't trying to be controversial there, Felipe.
It's also interesting because
he thought about it. He thought about it.
Our Secretary of State in Florida at that time was also local former Representative Catherine Harris, who you know well, obviously.
Yeah, I was her campaign manager when she ran for the U.S. Senate in 2006.
Yeah, so Little Sarasota has had a large role in American presidential history.
We really have.
In no short part due to Jamie Miller's activities here.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
That's cool.
We Newt Gingrich, of course, had his largest presidential event here in Sarasota at Dolphin Aviation. So I'm awfully proud of that kind of tidbit that I was able to put together while he was running for president. And I was involved with him for his pre-presidential debate that was in Jacksonville.
So what does one have to do to be a consultant to a campaign? Like is just your track record, just your history?
It's sort of like I think it's sort of like getting elected. You just have to get hired. You have to get more votes than the other person.
Right.
I think people who hire me more often than not hire me to have long-term strategic planning for their careers rather than just running their one election. Okay. And so I'm proud to work closely with Senator Gritters and Congressman Stubbe here locally. The firm I'm with is working with the Attorney General of Louisiana right now, Tom Landry, who's running for governor and front runner for governor in Louisiana, which is an off-year election that will happen this November. So,
would you ever consider taking on Felipe as a client?
I already have, and he doesn't know it. So I've already started. The mentorship has already started.
I love it.
So so I try to work with people who want to have long runways, want to really kind of strategically plan, and I'd like to say that I like to try to, in half a dozen years, have a half a dozen paths that are available to my clients.
For one reason or another, I know a good amount of the consultants around here, on both sides of the aisle, I'd say, because there are some that work on both sides too, right, as you know. What sets Jamie apart and what I first noticed about him is probably the only one I know who's done it long enough and serious enough to put two kids through college, doing only that. I think that's fair to say.
That may be true.
Yeah, I don't know anybody else who only does that who has put two kids through college. I may be wrong, but remember, we don't fact check on this podcast.
I love that.
Well, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't spend a couple minutes talking about the foundation that you and your wife are co-presidents of, correct?
Yeah, so it goes back to giving back to the community. So my wife, Jennifer Bash, and myself are co-presidents of Sertoma. We were installed July 1st. We're very happy to say that since we kind of agreed to become presidents in May, that we've added 17 new members from about 60 to 77. And believe it or not, almost all of those are women, people from diverse backgrounds and under the age of 40. Wow. And so it's a club that we have a lot of fun. We have a golf tournament coming up December 2nd. We're doing a haunted just for fun, not a fundraiser, a haunted trolley tour over Halloween, and
that's awesome.
So we try to do some things that are interesting. But our main goal is to raise. Many people probably have heard of Hometown Fest at Nathan Benderson Park. Yeah. That's put on by Sertoma.
Trey was a sponsor, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm a sponsor. Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so thank you. It does mean a lot because we're really the only organization in the county that provides speech and language therapy to children. And so we're trying to work with the school system and others to not only identify those, but we're trying to identify those who are under the age of 5 so we can start reaching them before they get to school. Yeah. And so that's one of the main things that my wife Jennifer is really supporting in her main mission this year is to try to work with the school board. Robin Marinelli is going to come speak to us in November 30th, and she's a former speech pathologist, and I did not know that before I started talking to her and asked her to join. And so we're just trying to make sure that people are aware that there's help out there. We help. I had speech therapy when I was a kid. I slurred my S's. So that says things, right? And so I had somebody work me over about 2 years, help me through that. And we help people all the way from people who slur their S's to folks who have severe autism, communication, and language problems. So some of that has to do with hearing. So while we're Sertoma National is a national organization, and they have a pilot program here in Sarasota called the Hearing Aid Project. And we just had a kind of the first step in that pilot project at Sarasota Memorial Health last month. And so it's a great organization. You can visit us at sarasotasertoma.org or .com. I'm not sure.
We'll fact check that, and we'll put the right one in there for you.
So what you're telling me is not only is it a great cause, but I get to do stuff like clay shoots, golf,
we had
trolley tours, hometown fest.
We have a happy hour once a month.
Sounds pretty good.
And it's one of the clubs, around town. People are like, oh, we used to meet every week for lunch. And, and people are just too busy for that.
Yeah.
And so we cut it down to, one time a month. We meet on the fourth Thursday for lunch. The second Thursday, we have a happy hour. We move that all around the county. In October, we'll have it at the O Bar in Osprey. Many people know that as the former Hoosiers, Hoosier Bar. It's under new ownership, so we thought we would support a new owner down there. And, so we're constantly doing, we have a holiday party coming up. And
how do we get on the Halloween trolley rides?
Go to sarasotasertoma.org.
Or .com, maybe.
Go to sarasotasertoma.com.
Google Sarasota Sertoma.
SaratomaKids.org.
Okay,
well, that's the national one.
SaratomaKids.org is who we raise money for.
Okay,
so
right.
Sertoma
You're the
Club
Sarasota
raised money.
chapter.
So we used to be the same organization, but for HIPAA reasons and grants, it made sense for Sertoma Kids to become their own organization. Right. So we're the club that raises money for Sertoma Kids.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on.
Hey,
we want to talk. We're not wrapping up just yet, though. We want to talk a little bit more about Sarasota. Obviously, you seem to be somewhat of an expert on the topic. So Trey's got a good question for you.
So obviously, you've noticed all the roundabouts popping up around Sarasota. What are your personal feelings on the roundabouts, and do you know how to use them?
So I like to say roundabouts work 100% of the time during hurricanes. And so I'm a fan of roundabouts because there's no doubt that they increase safety. There may be a few more accidents, but way more safe, way fewer fatalities.
They don't run on power.
Way fewer major injuries than T-bone accidents. And so, yes, I do know how to use them. The gas pedal's your friend, and
unless you're supposed to be yielding,
the gas pedal's your friend. No, get in there and do it. Get in there and do it. So act like you're getting on I-75.
All gas, no brakes.
Act like you're getting on I-75. So,
maybe you could clear something up for us, since you're in sort of the political government relations field.
I'm not a traffic expert, not a driving expert.
No, you're not. Not the FBO, right? The roundabouts that we got on 41, it was my impression always that those were from a grant and the money had to be spent, post 2008, and that's why we got like 3 in a row randomly there.
I don't know the answer to that.
All right.
So
we'll find out.
The lack
eventually.
of fact checking continues.
We'll find out eventually for sure.
I think the one thing that bothers me is anytime I'm sitting at a red light and there's nobody there and I'm waiting on an inanimate object to say that I can go through.
Oh yeah.
Go through the intersection safely, and roundabouts cure that.
Yeah.
They speed up the process. They're safer. They're
just
the argument, use them and it'll all be okay.
The argument against is just always about the people that don't know how to use them. But for those of us that do, they're not all that bad. Yeah. So
when you have the electricity is out, they still work.
Well, you also can't run a roundabout, right? People running red lights is a huge problem. And actually, bonus question: how do you feel about traffic cameras?
I am anti-traffic cameras.
All right, let's give us that logic on that one.
So traffic cameras, we have in our system, you're allowed to face the people who are accusing you of a crime, and traffic cameras take away that right. And so, I'm just kind of purely that you should be able to look a police officer in the face and plead your case.
Yeah.
And if so, then you should be able to go to court. And if you go to court, there shouldn't be penalties. Additional penalties. So, like, I've gotten a red light camera before, and it's like, oh, well, pay your $110, or you can go to
now,
or you can go to court, and it's going to cost you $400 plus your points plus your blah blah. There shouldn't be. You're either guilty or you're not.
Right.
The penalty should be the same.
Right.
If you're guilty,
it's kind of like a threat to not go to
It's
court.
not like, oh, you get a discount. So to me, it's a little bit of taxation without representation.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in a district like where you can't vote on the people who are deciding to put the traffic cameras up.
It's funny you say that, because the way we used to get out of them when I lived in D.C. was we would say, produce the camera, and they couldn't do it. Because, D.C. is just full of them.
Yeah.
But we would say, produce the camera, and they don't want to go up the pole and take it down and bring it to court. It's
true.
So that was the only little.
I didn't fight the one I got recently. I just freaking paid it because, just there's actually no real,
because
they don't really make it very clear on how to fight it, first of all. Second of all, I mean,
it's a money grab. It's a money grab. It's a money grab.
I'm like, all right.
So do we have them in what county has them? Because I figure
we have them in the city of Sarasota.
Right here,
city,
301 in Fruitville.
but
It's on my daily commute every time.
The county has none.
And then
city.
Manatee, they turn
The
their
city has like 6 or 8, I believe it is.
So
6
you have one like at Tuttle and Bahia Vista. You have one at Bee Ridge and 41.
Now, how would you feel if 50% of the proceeds from red light cameras in the city of Sarasota went to the Bay Park Conservancy?
Well, at least that would make a little sense.
But still not for them.
No, I would not be for them.
This is a question.
Bad government's bad government.
It's true.
And it's a slippery slope as well, too. Right. You accept that, and then you accept the next thing.
Then that's speeding. Then it's like, oh, if they're going too fast in your app.
Yeah, that's
right.
tough.
Sometimes government is making our city better at our expense, right? You know what I mean?
What's the
with
quote?
The parking tickets downtown?
Safety in the guise of, or control in the guise of safety. The government always implements all these rules on you.
That is the quote. Yep, you nailed it. I think that's exactly to a T.
Well, that is a quote for sure.
But they say those red light cameras.
Write that
down. Don't they say those cameras actually increase accidents because everybody knows the red light camera's there? So they stop short because they don't want to get the ticket.
The issue is you do start, you change what are normal behaviors, right? That's the other argument, is that the normal behavior is to go through the yellow light. That's what you're supposed to do. They're not red light cameras. They are traffic cameras. And traffic cameras are set up to move traffic safely through the intersection. They're not set up to stop traffic.
Right.
So when you go from a yellow and people start slamming on their brakes, it creates a problem. Because people are no longer, you end up with longer lines of traffic. You have to then readjust the cameras, then all these other things, because you've changed behavior because people don't want to get a ticket.
We should dispute this one for sure again soon and get rid of these freaking red light cameras. I've gotten 2 of them.
Maybe bring a camera down next time you have to pay one, and then do a segment.
Well, listen, this is a question that it does. I will say it does trip some people up sometimes because we put you on the spot. But I don't think that you're gonna even stutter here because a lot of people. But we get a guest on here, interesting topics, things like that. But we want to know who that in Sarasota that we should talk to, that maybe is an unknown or maybe is a very well known that needs to get a word out.
I can't believe the Oyster Boys beat me, because that would have been a great one. I was like, nobody knows the Oyster Boys. They've already been here.
Quick.
Yeah, so I think an interesting speaker I've seen recently has been Rick Piccolo from the airport. There's a lot of expansion going on.
Yes,
out there.
That is a good one. Yeah.
And then another one, a major CEO in our community, the largest employer is Sarasota Memorial Health, David Vedder.
Yeah.
He's very, another person who is, kind of government, but kind of not, but a lot of building, a lot of economic development around both of those, a lot of jobs around both of those organizations. So if you're talking about the economy and jobs and things like that, I think both of those would be. Dr. Tomasco from the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program would be probably an interesting person for you guys to speak to just from the scientific side of Midnight Pass. So I think that, and the Bay Health in Little Sarasota Bay, if you're wanting a little bit more of a scientific.
I told you I knew he was going to kill it. Knew he was going to hit a home run.
That's 3. I don't know how many you want.
So here's what we do with these. We'll chop them up into little clips, and we'll send them to those people. So those people are going to get clips of you shouting them out saying, you should get them on, right?
That's great. Hey, that's perfect.
Well, thanks again for coming on. We appreciate it. Had a blast with you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely.